we could get to
Okay.
the DPRK Russia-China meeting, because I think it's very connected to this idea of China being the future. We had Sergei Shoigu also make an appearance at this celebration of the anniversary of the armistice, July 1953. And so, yeah, your take on the significance of this, because I find it to be, first of all, most people don't know that China does not call it the Korean War. It is the, I believe they call it the victory of the war to resist U.S. aggression and aid Korea.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you had Russia involved in this meeting. You had, and it seemed like there was an intense emphasis on sovereignty and almost a negation. You had Antony Blinken say, China, you need to make sure DPRK, North Korea, is controlled, do something about this or else. And these countries came together and said, no, we're not we're not into that. We are friends and we're working together. What was your take on the meeting?
No wonder think tanks are already freaking out complete. I was reading before talking to you, I was reading one of those idiots at Yale basically saying that we are deeply worried about the China-Russia DPRK alliance. You ain't seen nothing yet because it hasn't even started. But look, this was huge in so many levels, including economically, geoeconomically. That's very, very important. Of course, Shoigu received as Mick Jagger, predictable. Meetings with Minister of Defense, a special meeting with Kim Jong-un, etc. So obviously bearing messages straight from Putin. And this informal alliance is already on the go. There's no question about that. It not only has to do with military exchanges and, let's say, expanding the Russia-China strategic partnership on a military weapons level to the absolutely impressive North Korean industrial military complex, and very effective. So, they're getting closer and closer. They have a closer interaction. But also geoeconomically, this is the Russian master plan, incorporating North Korea into the integration of the Russian Far East, both Koreas, and of course, all the way towards Eurasia, Central Eurasia, and beyond. That's something that has been discussed years ago already, and it will be discussed again this year at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok in September. I plan to go to the one this year. One of the key reasons is that I want to see what they are discussing about integration of the Koreas with the Far East. This is a major, major, major story, because what the Russians want to do is they are investing in the Arctic Silk Road as much as the Chinese. The Arctic Silk Road is another branch of the Belt and Road Initiative for the Chinese. So we have the Russians and the Chinese converging on let's say, developing the Arctic Silk Road. The Russians want to integrate both Koreas to the Russian Far East. And of course, they can use what? Once again, very, very important, Eurasia Economic Union. And the column that I was writing before talking to you, one of the key points of the column is that there's a strong possibility that this could all start with a free trade agreement between the Eurasia Economic Union and the DPRK. This will be a way to have investment, loans, grants, productive investment, etc., by the 5 members of the Eurasia Economic Union in the DPRK, and they can buy DPRK products. Don't forget that they manufacture. When I was in North Korea 10 years ago, oh my God, even more than 10 years ago, they manufacture they are self-sufficient in almost everything. So they cannot sell their products abroad because of those horrendous American sanctions. They basically cannot trade with anybody. For instance, they have a a trade office in Bangkok, in Thailand, which I visited years ago, same thing. But it's very tiny. It's just 5 diplomats, etc., and they are very constrained in what they can trade with Thailand, which is it's considered a friendly nation for the DPRK. So it's very complicated. So if you have the institutional weight of the Eurasian Economic Union behind it, it's much, much easier. And obviously, Russia and Kazakhstan, the two main powers of the Eurasian Economic Union, are interested. And this will allow the progressive integration of the DPRK with the Russian Far East. Very, very important, which will, okay, very optimistically, but this is something that was discussed in Vladivostok in the past. And the project is, it's dormant at the moment, but will be resuscitated, is to build a Trans-Korean railway and link that with the Trans-Siberian, which is a mega win-win for everybody concerned. Because then we're going to have South Korea, North Korea, the Russian Far East integrated into the great Eurasian market directly, without depending on any sort of American blockade anywhere. Inland, South Korea, North Korea, Russian Far East, the border is very, very close, Russia, Chinese and Russia, North Korean border. So this is something that we'll be discussing in Vladivostok this year, for sure. So that was discussed this week in Pyongyang. And of course, in terms of the Russian master plan to integrate North Korea into Eurasia-wide development, it was enormous. And I would say the geoeconomic significance is going to be, further on down the road, even more important than the geopolitical interaction, of course, and the military interaction of all that. So anybody with we still have a brain in the beltway, then when they look at this picture, they have to be terrified. Because if this happens, even in the short term, if there is progress in different fronts in the short term, it turns the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific completely upside down. And there's nothing that Quad, AUKUS, and all that bullshit can do about it. Forget it. This will be different. This will be a close geopolitical, geoeconomic, and military integration of Russia, China, and North Korea.
That's huge. That's huge.
Okay, you're talking about huge. That's huge.
That is huge. The more integration, the more integration that occurs too, it does lead to this question of, well, because this is what North Korea, DPRK, has wanted since the beginning, and South Korea at various stages, of course, of its very complicated and unfortunate development in many instances, reunification. I mean, that the more that these countries, the more that the DPRK is able to also be open to the world and be more connected in this way that you described, the more possible that becomes. It just you can't avoid it.
You can avoid it, exactly.
And we had a question that goes along with this topic, asking why do you suspect Shoigu? Yeah, why do you expect Shoigu was doing there? Because the Chinese delegation emphasized
the question.
Yes.
I assume I more or less answered the question, but I love the way it was framed.
Yes. Because that's a big deal that the Russian delegation was dominated really by Shoigu's presence, and the fact that that is a military delegation going to the DPRK.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sending a big message
to the Minister of Defense, but then talking to the Supreme Leader.
Yeah, exactly. So in that sense, then, Pepe, given all that you've talked about, maybe for the last few minutes, for the DPRK, for China, for Russia, what we're describing here, I think, too, what you've described is, Russia and China is at the center of all of what you've discussed here.
Yes.
But in terms of the DPRK, it feels even even more significant, you mentioned the isolation economically, but even on this like political front, I think the DPRK gets the most maybe inattention in the sense that it is so isolated. It doesn't have the ability to really assert itself globally in any particular way. But could you talk about maybe why Russia and China would be, given that the sanctions are very harsh, and even China says we follow the sanctions because they're United Nations based, UN based. Why this relationship seems to be jumping off now, and especially in the last several years? Why do you think that is?
Because especially with this visit, all these different strands and nodes and poles of Eurasia integration, especially this year. This year is, I think, future historians are going to analyze 2023 as the year of, not the year of living dangerously, to remember our recent past, but the year of living not dangerously anymore, where everything was turned upside down. And everything is starting. The new multipolar world is actually starting, and people can actually see it. So maybe they were, for the past 3 or 4 years, okay, we don't have the exact right conditions to start our not reapproximation, but to get closer to North Korea. Now it's the time, because it directly involves the whole process of Eurasia integration, and one of the nodes that are not solved yet, and they are not, the infrastructure needs to be built. For instance, this Trans-Korean railway, and this integration between the Korean universe and the Russian Far East universe, with participation from the Chinese as well. This is something that they could have attempted, 1 decade ago, 2 decades ago. No, they didn't have the conditions. They didn't have enough, I would say, mutual strengths, both Russia and China. And now that they are mutually strengthened by the strategic partnership, plus all these multilateral organizations where they are the top members, BRICS, SCO, etc. They have BRIO on one side. The Russians had Greater Eurasia Partnership on the other side. Well, if you study the concept of Greater Eurasia Partnership, which is the official Russian concept for integration, you look at the Far East and you see that the Far East is basically cut off from the Koreas, which is completely absurd. So we have to integrate them. And this has nothing to do with legitimizing or not legitimizing a political regime. It's a complete. The Russians are very pragmatic, and the Chinese as well. This is a matter of geoeconomic integration that is fruitful for everybody involved and beyond. And it's a node of Eurasia that has been neglected so far, right? So that makes sense completely. And of course, obviously, militarily, it goes without saying, because the natural affinities of those three are more than obvious. And of course, Russia and China see as North Korea as a victim of imperialism, just like the North Korea see themselves, in fact. It's very striking when you go there and you are allowed to talk to some people. Of course, every visit to North Korea is heavily guided. We had people on us 24/7. But we managed to have a few conversations outside a little bit, or people were, after 2 or 3 beers, they start spinning the beans a little bit. They're extremely proud of the fact that they are a pole of resistance against imperialism for all these decades. And they never succumbed, they resisted. So it's just like Cuba. When you talk to Cubans, they will tell you the same thing. It's just like when you talk to Vietnamese, now it's a completely different. When you talk to Vietnamese in the past, I remember talking to Vietnamese who were companions of Ho in the Maquis in Hanoi. And they were so proud of what they did. Of course, you totally understand. And if you come from the Global South, which is my case, I was born and raised in the Global South. For us, instinctively, we know what they're talking about,
Right. Yeah, well, I'm gonna squeeze every minute out of you, Pepe, because this has become an incredibly good conversation. But for everyone listening, if you subscribe on Patreon or you do super chat, you can ask questions and I will pull them up for our guests. And this one is related. So, aside from antics in the Republic of China, I thought this had to do more with Korea. So maybe they mean Republic of Korea. How do you think this will throw a monkey wrench in these developments? So I think
I
they,
love
I
chess.
hope,
I love
yes,
chessboard maniacs. This is so cool.
yes. How do you think that these chessboard maniacs will try to throw a monkey wrench in the development that you were speaking of with Korea, DPRK?
They cannot do anything against North Korea, Danny, and you who answered this very good question. There's nothing they can. They already threw everything, a million kitchen sinks against North Korea, and North Korea is they have an industrial military complex and they have hypersonic missiles. Can you believe that? So, and the Russians and the Chinese look at that and say, wow, this is an example of resistance. Of course, the old USSR people, even inside the FSB, the old KGB types, they say, wow, these are badass motherfuckers, for sure. And the Chinese, the same thing. So,
Right.
so it naturally raises for both the industrial military complexes in Russia and China, and also diplomatically, a lot of goodwill. Said it's not a matter of we're going to help North Korea. No, we're going to, in a sense, steer North Korea towards their rightful role as an Eurasian power. It's a completely different story, And for instance, we could foresee, and it's not far-fetched, North Korea as a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Why not? You just need Russia and China to agree and then tell the other members, okay, do you have anything against it? I wonder if India would be against it or Pakistan would be against it. Definitely not. Or even Iran. Nobody will be against it. And the Eurasia Economic Union, the same thing. It will start probably with a free trade agreement, which is something relatively loose compared to integrating North Korea into the EU, but it's already in process, and this was confirmed this week by Moscow. They already said it. No. We want to get closer to North Korea via the Eurasia Economic Union. So that's it. This train already left the station. And once again, there's nothing the chessboard maniacs can do about that.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.